Welcome to another Health Announcement Spotlight. I'm Jody Tropiano Green, the head of content for health, and I'm lucky to be joined today by Jen Goldsack, the CEO of the Digital Medicine Society, also known as DIME. Jen, thanks for joining us today.
It's always fun to come and hang out with you guys, Jody.
Yeah, always fun. Well, today we're going to explore the state of digital health tools and the role of the DIME seal. So let's get right into it. So DIME was created 5 years ago. In that time, how has digital health grown and evolved? I know it's a loaded question, but what are some of the big challenges that the industry is facing, specifically with the introduction of ML and AI technologies, and what opportunities come along with that?
Jody, that's a huge question. And what's wild to reflect on, because DIME is celebrating our 5th anniversary this year, is everything that our sector and our industry has been through in the last 5 years. So we were founded in 2019. This was pre-pandemic. This was tip of the spear opportunities with digital. We really saw the opportunity both to change the way that we develop new drugs, but also fundamentally change the way we care for people in the digital era. We're not tech determinists, but we really believe that if we want to drive towards a sustainable healthcare future, leaning into the technologies that existed even in 2019 was the pathway that we had to pursue with a very patient-centric, pragmatic approach. And then we lived through the pandemic. And I think at that point, there was exposure to tools. There was a level of investment that we'd never seen before in a nascent sector within such a complex industry. There was successes, there were lessons learned. But what we did end up with as we sort of started to emerge from the pandemic was a very complex, a very crowded market. And then that was followed by the broad scale introduction of generative AI solutions, machine learning that was able to sort of stand on top of all of the work that we've been doing in our industry for probably 10 years now on data liquidity. And where we find ourselves today is, sadly, in a healthcare market that is even more vulnerable, that is even more fractured than it was pre-pandemic. We know that we are struggling to control costs for individuals and societies in a way, despite decades of efforts trying to bend the cost curve, we haven't been able to be effective with. We see hardworking clinicians who pursued a vocation to care for people fleeing the industry. We see enormous disparities. We see the outcomes not being where they need to be. We see challenges with sort of, access as well as equity. And there are all of these solutions, and it's incredibly difficult to think about what's high quality, what's trustworthy, what's the right solution for my clinicians, for my patients, how am I going to pay for it, this and the other. And so the reason that we introduced the DIME seal, actually, we were very proud to announce it at Health, and that was very intentional, was we want to support the end users who are spending thousands of hours a year trying to de-risk their software purchase decisions. There are so many options, trying to figure out what actually has evidence to support the claim, whether that's a clinical claim or a functional claim, trying to figure out what has the appropriate privacy and security protection so it's not going to bring additional risk, trying to figure out what's actually usable, right? You can have an FDA cleared clinical decision support system, but it doesn't dock into your EHR. That's no good to anyone. Honestly, that's going to drive your clinicians crazy, and we can't do that right now, right? Plus, we need to think about equity. So we wanted to make it easier for the buy side to actually identify high quality, trustworthy products that are worth considering, making that sort of investment into de-risking your software purchases easier. And what we wanted to do was actually create a way for developers who are building brilliant digital health software products and making the effort to capture evidence and writing good code sets that are secure and thinking about clinical workflows and actually allow them to differentiate themselves in the crowded market. So we've seen incredible adoption of the DIME seal since Health. We really think that this is a very elegant solution to problems on both the developer and buy side of the market. And we are enthusiastic about the impact this will have going forward.
That's amazing. Yeah, far too often time and resources are wasted choosing the wrong solution. So applaud for you all for kind of stepping in. So why is it critical to establish this unified definition of good in digital health?
Well, I mean, in health more broadly, two things are true. One, we're defined by asymmetric information, right? There's always someone on the other side of the table in a transaction, whether that's between a patient and a clinician, whether it's between a researcher who's developed a new molecule and the prescribing clinician. There's always this sort of mismatch of very complex information. That's also true in digital health. We can't expect small and medium-sized health systems that don't have a chief digital officer, that don't have a chief health information officer, to be able to go through the complexity of a variety of different software products, including complex AI and ML tools, and say, I can be confident that this performs. I can be confident that the privacy and security is there. I know exactly how this is going to go and sort of mold into my workflow. And I think that, you know, I'm not going to introduce concerns around equity. That's an unreasonable ask. So that was one of the drivers. The second piece is, Jody, across the board in healthcare, we rely on third parties to help address this issue of asymmetric information. So we can think about things like NCQA and the Joint Commission, who will award stars or recognize through certification different treatment programs at different health systems. We can look at Magna Awards for nursing. We can look at what ASTP ONC does through their voluntary EHR certification program. FDA, right, is the top of the list for sort of badging that any medical product making a medical claim is safe and effective. So what we wanted to do was to say, we've reached a point with digital health software products that the market is so crowded and so complex that we need that third party to come in and be that adjudicator. So we're not going to tell you it's perfectly fit for purpose, but we are going to tell you that a product is of high quality and it's trustworthy. That narrows the top of the funnel if you're a buyer, and it incentivizes you if you're a developer to really build to a set of standards. And Jody, you hit the nail on the head where you said unifying standard as well, because one of the challenges we see, very common across healthcare, is how fractured the entire industry is. So right now, there are brilliant certifications you can get that will demonstrate that you are, you know, you have really good security practices, right? We can look at SOC 1, 2. We can look at high trust, for example. We can look at data support to support your clinical claims, right? The highest level of that is obviously an FDA clearance, for example. What we've done is we've brought all of these things together. And so we evaluate holistically that you have evidence to support your claim, whether it's clinical or functional, that you are appropriately thinking about privacy and security, that you are thinking about workflows, and that you do have equity in mind. And what I love that our team did, and this was as a result of really good, frankly, feedback from industry and members of our governance committee, who are a bunch of rock stars, was to say, let's also make sure that we don't systematically discriminate against earlier stage product developers, right? So you might not have several $100,000 and several hundred sort of person hours to dedicate to SOC 1, 2. If you have that certification, you test out of the entire privacy and security section of the DIME seal. We're not going to make you do it twice. You just upload that certification and we will recognize it. That's part of being unifying. But if you're earlier stage, we give you lots of other ways to demonstrate your best practices. We will ask you a series of questions, we'll ask for documentation, and we're really sort of set out to be inclusive. We also have thought about what's the value proposition to more mature companies with more mature offerings, right? So you could think about a traditional big medical device company. Why would they need a DIME seal? They have a brand reputation, they have an FDA clearance. And what we're increasingly realizing, and you can see this through case studies in the market, is the switching costs, Jody, of digital health software products are much lower than anything we've ever seen before. You don't win a contract once and then, you know, your standard for your ventilator or for your MRI becomes the de facto standard forevermore for the health system. We can switch these software products. So the more traditional companies are leveraging the DIME seal to say, we're actually really interested in demonstrating our usability and our performance in the workflow and the user experience using the DIME seal. So there's something for everyone, and that was very intentional.
What's next for DIME? And, you know, you've said a lot of amazing, you know, advancements that you've made already with this DIME seal, but how can the audience get involved? How can they learn more? How can they stay updated on what's next?
So the first thing is anyone who is at Health should contact us because we have a discount code for any developer who actually wants to go through and get their product evaluated for the Dime Seal. It is not an arduous process. It's a really nice platform. We have a great team there to assist you. So that would be the first call to action. The second one is we're doing, and you mentioned it at the beginning, Jodie, and it really is the topic of the day. We're thinking an awful lot about some of the downstream considerations around AI. So one of the initiatives that we just launched at Dime is a healthcare AI implementation playbook. What we're trying to think about is it doesn't matter how much investment is happening right now. It doesn't matter how good the efforts from CHI, from the federal government, from others are at evaluating whether a model is trustworthy, if the clinics and the health systems that can benefit the most don't have the knowledge or capabilities to actually do the implementation. And it's not the sexiest part of the world of AI, the nuts and bolts, clinical workflows. How do we evaluate a procurement decision? How do we get paid? But unless we get ahead of this, it is going to mean that we're going to have all of these high quality, trustworthy products and nowhere to actually embed them. So we're doing that work at Dime with an absolutely extraordinary community, and those resources will be out in the first half of next year.
Well, congratulations. Thank you for all you're doing, and we'll have to stay tuned for what's next.
Thanks, Jodie, and grateful to you and the Health team for always being such wonderful partners in this. It was a real privilege to be able to launch at Health. We had a lot of enthusiasm, and I am proud of how the Dime Seal is already changing the field. So lots more to come.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Jen.